Hello everybody and welcome to How To from TDP. I'm Robbie Thornton, the founder of TDP.ie, and tonight I want to talk to you about Dynapack. Well, what I really want to talk to you about actually is how to read the Dynapack figures we supply if you've had your car tuned or power run with us, because sometimes this causes some confusion and we'd like to make sure that our customers are clear. So we've decided as our first how-to video, this would be a good topic to cover. So I'm going to switch to my desktop. Here we are. I'm in the way, but I'll make myself a bit smaller hopefully. So normally we would supply you with the files electronically by WhatsApp or email, and you would then download them onto your computer, your tablet or so. We're assuming you're putting them on a computer for now. They're in PDF format. Nearly everybody knows what a PDF file is at this stage, and there's lots of software out there to open the PDF files, so we're going to assume that you can open a PDF file for this. So I'm going to click on the example files, say that these are the files I've sent you for example's sake. They will be labeled. The label will help identify what they are, but also once inside the file you'll also be able to see the telltale signs from Dynapack. So I'm going to make myself a bit smaller here, get the hell out of the way. And if I click on axle torque power, basically we get the axle torque and the axle power. The axle torque is a big number because it's measured at the axle. This sometimes confuses people because they assume that their engine has X amount of torque. 2 litre normally aspirated engine might have 200 pounds-feet of torque, but sometimes they might see 900 pounds-feet of torque at the wheels and they go, how's this possible? Well, the reason it's possible is that virtually all engines spin too fast for the wheel, and you have a gearbox which gives you your gear ratios, but after your gearbox, before you got to your wheels, you have a final drive. This is a differential front or rear, but it also has a multiplication ratio. So it multiplies the torque by the ratio, so in this case we're 4.111, but it also divides the speed by the same amount. So anyway, if this car, this example car here, Nissan GTR R32, pretty much standard car, got a few nice engine upgrades internal just to make it a bit safer, but nothing really fancy. So it's not a big power car running on a fairly simple ECU, but it's got a simple set of figures which we're going to discuss. So it produces 1,273 foot-pounds of torque at 5,907. So basically, if you're wondering what that is at the flywheel, without looking at the page that we give you for the flywheel, you can make a bit of a calculation. You can use your calculator on your computer. Hopefully now I can get my calculator on my computer to work. Okay, so I'll just put it here. So here we have our calculator. So if you put in 1,273.37 to be exact, and then you divide it by the differential ratio on the sheet, you get 309.75. Okay, that's 309.75 pounds of torque entering the differential, basically. It's not really true because there's a small amount of loss goes on in the differential, probably a bit more than 309 arrived at the differential to spit out the figure at the other end, but for argument's sake it's 309. Okay, we're going to park that figure, we'll remember that for later. The other things you can see on this sheet are the RPM at where you have your maximum torque, and on the right hand side you have the RPM where you have your maximum horsepower. So in this case it pumped out 379.46 horsepower at the wheels. That's not bad for a 27-year-old car, something like that. So now the next page we give you normally would be flywheel torque. Now the flywheel torque is our estimate of what the vehicle would produce at the flywheel if it was the flywheel only we're measuring. Now we're measuring this through the transmission, so there is room for error, but on certain vehicles that we've done a lot of, especially this type vehicle, we're pretty sure we're very, very close. We've done so many, we've had so many compared against other dynos, engine dynos, and even talked to the likes of Nismo on what they deem the transmission loss in the wheel bearings, the differential, the gearbox and everything to be. So anyway, besides the point, so we estimate that this vehicle has 340.99 pounds of torque at 5,956 RPM. So if you remember to a second ago, we had 309 pounds of torque calculated without any losses. So that's 31 pounds of torque different, and that's a pretty feasible, realistic amount of torque loss at 6,000 RPM through a big gearbox with a lot of oil, transfer box for four-wheel drive and rear differential. So that's not too far out in realistic terms. On the right hand side then we have power, and how you know that this is flywheel horsepower is because it just says power. It doesn't say axle, it says flywheel power. This is our estimate at the flywheel, 417.56 at 7,285 RPM. Now the reason that there is two sets of figures is we have a choice. There's a yellow dot here and a green dot here. We have a choice of putting markers on the runs at certain places to highlight things. On a run like this that's not extraordinary, we'll just put the markers wherever we see fit, one at the highest point and one somewhere else along, because there's nothing to really indicate to the customer. Sometimes we might put a marker at a weird point to indicate a difference. There are cars that would have huge differences when you change camshafts and stuff, normally aspirated. So we'll use that in the future. One of the other sheets then you will receive as well is probably one that shows you what your fueling is at full throttle during the power run. So on the right hand side we have the engine torque at the flywheel again, and sorry, on the left hand side, yeah, the engine torque, the flywheel again, I think I said right hand side, and on the right hand side we have the lambda number. So it shows the lambda number based on the RPM, and reasonably self-explanatory. Turbocharged car, we want to be running reasonably rich to stop it melting, keep the temperatures down, keep the turbos the right temperature. So this car is not bad for the power it produces. There is a small amount of a dip here just as it comes on cam. The ECU in the car is not the most advanced, so rather than trying to make this a really straight line in every circumstance, we decided on this ECU we'd let it go a touch rich here. It doesn't affect the performance at all, and that little bit of richness will produce some safety in the future. Now, one of the other things you're obviously going to get with a turbocharged car is your boost pressure graph. So we measure boost pressure in absolute kilopascals. Absolute is a scale where 0 is complete and utter vacuum. 100 is the air you breathe today at sea level. 101.3 is average atmospheric pressure at sea level worldwide. And 200 is equivalent to 1 bar of boost. 250 is equal to 1.5 bars of boost. So some people see this and they go, oh my god, you're boosting my car too hard, or whatever. Well, the truth is 100 is basically atmospheric, like a normally aspirated car will just run along here at 100. And then anything above 100 is getting a bit of help from the supercharger, turbocharger, or in this case the twin turbos. So this car basically gets up at 3,750 to basically 0.956 bar of boost, and then at full RPM here at nearly 7,000 RPM it gets to 203.9 kPa, 1.03 bar, or 1.04 bar if you round it. So they are the four main sheets that you would probably get from us. If your car was in for an upgrade, or there was a problem, or there are many other reasons, or it's been here before, we might actually give you a set of comparison figures. So you will then get to see what the car produced before we tuned it and after we tuned it. So in this situation, this car basically, we didn't really take a huge amount of info before we tuned it, but we did run it once just to make sure that everything was right after we'd done our mechanical work to it, and it produced the lower blue line. Okay, and then often you will see that we will give down here, we will give you the peak figure from the lower line and the peak figure from the upper line, and it will give you a delta, which is a change for the better or the worse. Minus is not a good number you want to see. The same over here. We will give you peak before, peak after, if you want to call it that way. Some other graphs you might get from us. You might get a big graph that looks like this. You need to be careful when reading these graphs. This graph here, so power, power at the flywheel, torque at the flywheel, axle power at the axles, and L1 actually is boost in kPa. So on the sides you'll have to be careful though, because there are different scales for torque and horsepower on this graph. So torque is on this outer scale and power is on this inner scale. Now it just happens that they're exactly the same at the moment, but sometimes they might be different, so you need to be careful how you read these graphs. The axle power is on the same scale graph as well. And then the orange line is the boost pressure, and that's in absolute kPa. So really speaking, that's a quick recap on all the different types of printouts you might get from us. You're welcome at any stage to contact us for clarification how to read them, but we think that this video, if you watch it, will give you a much clearer idea of how to read your graphs, especially if you are going down the route of possibly having further modifications done in the future, or you've just spent a lot of money on modifications and you want to make sure that the parts you picked worked the way you think they do. It's a great way we can give you before and after. So I would like to thank you very much for watching this video, and hopefully we'll see you again at another how-to video from TDP. Thank you.